Hey, how everybody doing? This your boy Hot Boy Zeke. I'm the guest host for the Not So Christian to Me show, and with me today, I got Dr. Verdi Lethermon, aka Dr. V.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Ma'am. How are you doing today?
Amazing.
Amazing?
Always amazing.
Always amazing.
Yes.
Dr. Lethermon is here showing us today. She's here with us, and we got her book. She is a great author today. She's going to talk more about her book. Tell me about your book. I like the cover, Surrender or Explode. And they got a PlayStation. Everybody see the PlayStation. Can you tell me a little bit more about this book?
Absolutely. I'd be delighted. Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way, is a book that I've written for young people, but old people too.
Okay.
The video game aspect comes from the place that I compare life to a video game.
Okay.
And so my message is, if you're going to be successful in life, it requires the same steps that you use to be successful in video games.
Okay.
It's not complicated. You move from level to level as you get older and older. If you don't learn along the way, you may explode.
Okay.
And so the idea is to help young people recognize that there are lessons that are critical that they must learn if they expect to be successful in life. And I come from the perspective that the expert is God, and his lessons are the lessons that are most critical to anything we're trying to do.
Okay, so you're pretty much giving everybody just a blueprint on how to manage.
Absolutely, and succeed.
And succeed.
See, because you don't want to just manage. You don't just play video games to stay on level 2.
No.
You play video games to get to the leaderboard.
Absolutely.
No different in life. You don't want to just stay on level 1. You want to get to the leaderboard.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you're a doctor. You are, a psychologist. Now, what made you step away from your psychology, actually talking with people on that level, just to, write a book, and actually that would make you do that?
Okay. Good question. And I haven't stepped away fully because my clinical practice is my heart and soul. But I stepped away because I got sick and tired of reading Yahoo headlines about the crazy things that our young people were being exposed to. And I recognized that too many of our high schoolers, college, and even young adults were torn between what the culture says and what God says.
Okay.
And I could not stand it. I could just give you headline after headline about conflicts, lies, and deceptions that our young people are exposed to, not exposed to, bombarded by. And the word about God's word as it applies to all of these challenges wasn't getting spread effectively and consistently enough for me. So I decided enough is enough.
Okay. So you pretty much kind of bridging the gap, like dispelling all the myths, let's say. Dispelling all the myths.
I'm bringing God's truth to the myths. See, because at the end of the day, everybody's got to make a choice.
Absolutely.
See, God gives us free will. And so I am bringing his word to the myths. And I'm going to allow anybody to make the choice that they make based upon how God's word compares to what the culture is feeding them.
And we do know that this culture is something else. It's from time and time, from generation to generation, it almost it gets worse and worse. About to say they wax more and more wickeder. So based on what I had to deal with, you have to deal with your generation versus my generation, and versus our sons, they have a lot more to contend with. They have a lot more stressors. So in this book, how do you address some of those?
You're asking amazing questions. The first thing I address is I want them to see the parallel, that life is really just like playing video games. You've got players, you've got characters, you've got experts, you've got traps, you've got you've got foes, you've got enemies, you've got skills and crafts. Those very same terms apply to living life. So that's the first thing. But the second thing I do is I ask the readers, who are you? Because if you don't know who you are, you cannot walk in that identity because you're constantly being challenged in that identity by people all around you. So the first question I ask is, who are you? And I want them to look at that from God's perspective, and God's perspective says, you were created in my image, period. Then I ask them, who is God? Because that's a question that, we kind of take for granted, that people know who God is. Well, a lot of people have a lot of myths and misconceptions about who God is. And one of the myths and misconceptions is that God is evil and mean and judgmental and condemning. And that overrides the fact that God is love and loving. And so I want to ask them, who do they see God to be? And then, who's your boss? See, because at some point in time, we have to know who we work for.
Right, exactly.
And if we don't know who we work for, or if we work for the wrong person, the wrong boss,
yeah, that's right,
we're in trouble. And so I want them to kind of, connect the dots. Who are you? Who is God? Who's your boss? Because that will help them have a context to begin to address the challenges that they face. So those are the first 3 steps.
That makes a lot of sense. You got to know who you are, because you can't address a situation and you don't know what it is. It's almost like you have a car. Right. You can't be loading up a car with truck items.
Right, exactly.
So you have that makes perfect sense. And a lot of times we have to know that identity point. Sometimes, especially at this age, kids are getting pulled in so many directions. They don't know who to identify with. We have so many things. It used to be just black or white. Now it's black, brown, purple, green, orange. You have such a spectrum, and when you give them so many choices, it's good, but it's bad because it confuses you.
Right. And one of my chapters addresses the fact that sometimes the culture is in direct conflict with God. And we have to ask ourselves, are we going to follow the way of the culture when it conflicts with God, or are we going to stand on what God says even if the culture puts pressure on us to conform? And so out of that comes questions. And that's the 4th level of the book. You've got questions, God has answers. And there's no question too complicated, too big, too silly, too anything for God to answer. But we have to be willing to take our questions to God, the expert, to get the answers that we need. And so many young people don't believe that God will give them answers. And so part of that chapter addresses the fact that God wants to talk to all of us.
So do you think, and just asking, do you think it's a problem with them trying to ask the questions, or maybe they don't know what questions to ask?
Oh, it's both. Absolutely. Because number one, some of the questions are hard, and some of the questions are very sensitive. Now, can I flip it over?
Good.
I think some of the questions are hard for, I'm calling them leaders, advocates, influencers, and my favorite term is game changers. The questions are hard for the adults to answer for the youth in a way that they can fully appreciate that this is the truth. It's not an opinion. It's not biased. It is what it is. So it's hard for them to ask, but it's often hard for adults to answer. And that's why one of the things that I bring to this book is I bring spirituality and psychology together, because these are both spiritual questions and psychological challenges, and I've merged the two.
Right. I mean, I know me growing up older, being grown up in the older church, like everybody's like, oh, just pray about it, but I gotta know what I'm praying about. And a lot of times, as in these institutions of religion and stuff like that, you're not supposed to question. But then if I need an answer, am I supposed to question? A lot of times, especially, and I know I have kids and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I want to ask you, but I don't know how to ask you.
Right.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that kind of the same with God is? Like we know what we want to ask him, but we don't know how to ask him.
Exactly. And I compare God to me as a parent. I'm a parent of 3 adult children now. Number one, there's no question they can't ask me that I won't give them my best answer. And as a human mother woman, I don't even come close to God. But there's nothing I can bring to God that he won't answer in his way when he's ready and when he knows I'm ready to hear it. Because God's not going to give me an answer to a question that he expects me to reject. And so sometimes I want an answer, but I'm not ready for it, and so God doesn't give it to me until he's more certain that I really do want to have his answer.
It's almost like helping somebody that want to change but really don't want to change.
Perfect. Absolutely.
I want the help, but I don't want how you're going to give me the help.
Exactly. And we can't tell God how to do it, when to do it, why to do it. We have to go to him with an open heart and allow him to speak into our situation, whatever that situation is.
Yeah, and I love, like I said, I love the title of Surrender or Explode, because you have to be able to give up some stuff to be able to get. A lot of times, and I know me personally, I don't really want to kind of hear the answer, but I need it. So it's that want versus need. You want that soft, but sometimes you need to hear that hard.
See, and when people ask me, how do I know it's God's voice when he speaks to me, I often say, I'm not that smart, and I wouldn't have said that to myself. Because it's just like you said. I don't want to necessarily hear that, but I need to hear it, but I wouldn't have said it to me just like that. And so when I listen to God's voice and I hear him speak, ouch, I wouldn't have said that to me, but two, I'm just not that smart to answer that question so precisely.
Right. And I think a lot of times we have to realize that it's that self-realization. Like, look, why would you go to a Toyota dealership about a Ford? You got to go who made it. Go to who made it. You got to go to the owner's manual.
So can I say preach, brother, preach? Because I'm just you keep saying the things that I'm just thinking, preach, brother, preach. Yeah. Because you really are breaking it down, and our youth are on a trajectory of destruction if we, the adult game changers, don't get them back on track. And so my book and my movement, it's actually a movement now. It's gone beyond a book. My movement is calling on game changers who want to roll up their sleeves, get down in the ditch, and pull our young people out of the mud that they find themselves in, even if they don't know they're in the mud. And we have to do that consistently. We have to do that graciously. We can't do that from a place of judgment and condemnation. And we have to do that transparently. Because a lot of times adults come at our youth like, we ain't never done nothing. We don't know what's wrong with you. If you get your act together, when we all know what we did, and whether we got caught or not, we all know what we did. Absolutely. But too often young people hear adults talking to them from this place of self-righteousness and condemnation. But at the end of the day, we can't choose for anybody. And our youth are no different. But we have to lay out the facts clearly, simplistically, and then they have to make a choice. One of my favorite pieces that I found as a parent was when I get to heaven, I know God's not going to ask me, did my children learn what I taught them? He's going to ask me, did I teach them what I should have? Then he's going to say, okay, good, go sit down. Get over here, children. Did you learn the lessons your mother and father taught? And I'm off the hook, because I'm not responsible for what they learn. I'm responsible for what I teach. And that freed me up as a parent. So when they roll their eyes at me and they don't want to hear it, and they smack their lips, that's okay.
Right.
Because all God said is, teach, mama. And I teach his word.
Yeah, and that's, I guess that's the responsibility of all parents, especially me. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. So it's like, God gave me the boys' side, and he gave me the girls' side. Now, Dad is always sensitive to the girls and hard to the boys, but I try to keep it more evenly wise. And like you said before, we the game changers. Like we are now that, like me, I'm now that generation that I grew up under. Like I want someone to like, hey, old school, like old school, who's he talking to? Like that, old school. So that generation above me or something like that, God's calling you home.
Right.
So now the responsibility lays on me, so I can make sure this young man don't do the same stuff that, maybe I did and somebody else did. Because I remember I grew up in 5th Ward. So seeing them old school cats like, hey, look here, come here, young fella, come here. They used to pull you to the side. Man, you don't want to do that, man. Go ahead and go home. We're losing that in this generation. We're losing that because everybody's like, look, that's not my problem. They got to do it, but it's not your problem till it becomes your problem.
Right.
And that's what I tell a lot of people. And seeing your work, we're talking about your book. I want to know, like, I know you're a psychologist. You're like, can you please tell the people your credentials? I just want them to know.
Okay, I am a licensed psychologist for the state of Texas. I have a PhD from Louisiana State University. Go Tigers! My undergraduate degree is from Southern University in Baton Rouge.
HBC.
And I worked for the Houston Police Department for 20 years.
Okay.
I retired in 2014. I have a private practice that I've had for over 30 years. And I'm most proud of the fact that I'm a mother of 3 amazing adult children, and I'm about to be the grandmother of 7 grandchildren by next March. So those are my main credentials. This is my 3rd book. I've written 2 other books, and this is my 3rd. And I said, this is more than a book. This is going to be a movement, because I've got a Facebook group that's coming out of this. I've got a Surrender or Explode Super Sunday that I'm going to push to anybody. When I say game changers, I'm not just talking about pastors. I'm talking about parents. I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about teachers. I'm talking about community leaders. But I've got a 5-week Surrender or Explode Super Sunday event that I'm planning.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a team challenge on the book starting in October. So this is more than just that book, and I expect that this is going to continue and it's going to spread. The Super Sunday is a national event. I'm actually looking for game changers across the country to launch this challenge on the same Sunday for 5 weeks across the country. So whether we have 5 churches or 200 churches, whether it's only the South or whether it's across the entire country, doesn't matter to me. But it's a Super Sunday challenge for any game changer who's willing to take it on in their garage, in their community center, in their church. It doesn't matter.
That's great. I love it that you said that you don't have to be a pastor, you don't have to be a minister or whatever, because a lot of times we think that's their job.
Exactly.
That's their job in the pulpit. But I tell anybody, I'm not a deacon, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher, but my work is outside of pulpit. I'm the action word.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go out there and say, hey man, you ain't gotta do it. I might not be, and nothing against all these pastors and ministers and evangelists, because I'm a preacher's kid. My mom was a missionary.
Gotcha.
But that's not my call. My call is to go out here and sit next to you and say, hey man, don't put that down. That's not gonna end well for you.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, and that's courage. You know what I'm saying? Game changing, and from what I'm getting, it takes a lot of courage, because you have to be trained. You have to step outside of yourself. You have to open up a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, and you have to let this person know that, hey, yeah, you did that. I did a little bit worse, but you know what I'm saying, look at where I'm at, and you're in a whole lot of better position. You go back to my son. My son is 19. At his age, I was going to the military and I already had his older brother. So I said, you're already a little bit ahead of me, because one, you graduated school, you're going to college right off, and you don't have any kids. I said, see, Robert, but we're going to try to keep you on that path. Right. A lot of stuff, we don't want to hear. We don't want to hear, but we need to hear it.
Well, and one of my chapters says parents must look in the mirror. See, because if we pretend that our children don't reflect us, shame on us. Because they do reflect us in so many ways. And in the ways that we love, we applaud and celebrate, but they reflect us in ways that we don't necessarily celebrate, and we have to tell the truth. Right. Because I love what you said, because we have made it, and even in a video game, I may fall into a trap, I may explode, but the game's not over unless I stop playing. I can always come back and move to the next level, because I learned from the explosion, or I learned from the trap I fell in, and then I use those skills and that new knowledge to elevate. Because the game doesn't stop until I say the game's over. Right. And any video game player will tell you that's true.
So you just got to keep playing. Huh?
You just have to keep, and that's the end of the book. Don't give up. It's a marathon, and you just keep pushing, because it's not over until you say it's over.
Oh, hey, that's a word right there. You tell me three. That's a word. That's a word right there. So I mean, just talking with you, it's like I'm going to get the book because I love reading stuff like that. I love filling myself with knowledge, and a lot of times, and from knowledge, even just the knowledge, you have to have the wisdom to be able to use it.
Right.
I always tell people the difference between knowledge and wisdom is knowledge is know-how.
Right.
Wisdom is how to use that know-how. So it does you no good to have that knowledge, but if you don't know how to use it,
Right.
it does you no good.
Well, you hear the passion in my voice because I am passionate about not letting our youth self-destruct. But the good news is, when you read the book, you don't know which of those stories are mine and which of those stories are someone else's.
So keeps you in this awe. You be like, this could be her. No, but this could be her.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the book. And some of the people who know me know some of my stories. But the beauty is, it's not just my story. We all have these stories. We all have these experiences. And when we are willing to be transparent, we can teach from that place with credibility. See, I have a 4C program, and one of the C's in my 4C program, and this is for the game changers, is credibility. Credibility with adults comes through transparency. Credibility doesn't come from my degree. Credibility doesn't come from how much money I make. Credibility doesn't come from what job I have. Credibility with adults comes from our ability to be transparent. And if an adult is not willing to be transparent, they won't be an effective game changer.
Because you have to I guess you got to foster, and it's a trust. Trust is like, literally, you got to have these kids, look, you can trust me because I'm not going to betray that.
Exactly.
And then when you feel like you're in that, that little piece or whatever, to where it's like almost, hey, look, I was wrong. A lot of times, and I had to learn as a parent, and I kind of learned this very young in parents and stuff like that. Hey, I'm not always right. Brother, I'm going through this same battle. I'm just going through, we're in the same game, but I'm just a different character at a different level. And you got to allow yourself, and just like the video game, just reference video games, you can go to a certain level, then you level up.
Right.
Or you become a different character with more powers and stuff like that. I just tell them, I'm just at a different level than you.
Yes.
I'm you, like, 20-some years from now, 30-some years from now.
Exactly.
I say, so in order to get to where I'm at, there's certain things that you got to go through.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think I'll piggyback on that and say, when I asked them in the beginning, who are you? When I'm playing a video game and I create my character, I make my character just the way I want my character to be. God didn't make us as mistakes or accidents.
Right.
He made us all just the way He wanted us to be. Now, everyone's not comfortable in how God made them, and everyone doesn't like who God made us to be. But God didn't go, oh, shoot, I messed up. I made a mistake. And if young people don't understand, God made them just the way He wanted them. Now, that doesn't mean they can't grow.
Right.
That doesn't mean He won't stretch them. It doesn't mean He won't bring more out of them. But God never said, oh, my bad, I messed up. But too many young people think they are messed up or they are mistakes. And I don't care how they were born or who they were born to, God didn't make a mistake.
And growth is uncomfortable.
Yes.
Growth is uncomfortable. I have an ivory plant. My mom's favorite plant was ivory. Ivory is almost virtually unkillable. It is unkillable. But I had a little piece of ivory, and what happened is the ivory grows and starts sprouting things. But what happens is, out of that pot, that little plant, that little bottle I had to move to a pot. And from a pot, see, when it was in there, it was uncomfortable because it was growing. So if you keep in that little realm, guess what? It's not going to be able to grow to the full potential. But when I give it a little bit more space, it'll grow out and say, oh, I can do this, or I can do that, I can do this. So, I mean, I love what you're saying, Dr. B. That's great. A lot of times, especially me, and we have to take accountability. Me as a young black man, I can't look for other entities to try to raise my kids, or even, and I wouldn't even say the ones that I gave birth to. If you within, reach, or within the kind of influential reach, you are my kid.
Right.
We have to all take that village to raise a kid attitude. They used to have that back way in the 60s and 70s, but it's like for some reason we got to the point to where we're more twerking and teaching.
That's a chapter in the book.
Oh,
it takes a village.
Takes a village.
Yes. So you're all up in my book.
All up in the book.
All up in my book.
I don't want to give it away, y'all. Y'all don't have to get this book. Y'all read this. This book right here, I am reading the back of it, and I really like the cover, but don't look past the cover. You gotta open this thing up, man. Yes. Don't let it be sitting on your counter like that old grandma Bible that you don't look at it. Take the time to actually read into it, because I guarantee you, Dr. V is dropping jewels. She got a whole necklace. She got a whole spaghetti.
So let me say one more point about that.
Go ahead.
Because that's critical. That is not a novel. That is not a casual read book. That is a book to be studied. And preferably, I want it to be studied with my game changers who are adults leading the studies. Again, I don't care if you're a pastor, a teacher, a parent, a coach, a community leader, or just someone who loves youth. But it's not a casual read. We can't say, here, young person, take this book and live happily ever after.
Okay. Well, hey, that's our time today, man. It's your boy, Hot Boy Z. I thank you so much for returning. Hey, you can give... how can they get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you, Dr.
They can find me on Facebook. There's a Facebook group, Surrender or Explode Game Changers. I'm on Instagram, and I'm also, my website is www.verdilethermon.com.
Okay, you heard it here. It's your boy, Hot Boy Z. I thank y'all so much, and this has been the Not So Christian to Me show. Take care.